back to the channel. So as you can see, we are on a Volvo today. As you've probably gathered from the thumbnail and the title of the video, I'm about to replace an injector. Now these injectors on this have been out recently, so I shouldn't be struggling with it too much. But otherwise we should be able to see the process involved. So anyway, I'll go through a couple of symptoms as to why we are changing the injector on the shitter. Right, so now we've lifted the big dopey bonnet up, we can see that underneath there is an engine with a fucked injector. And the one that's problematic is that one there. And I'll tell you why it's problematic. The car will sometimes randomly cut out, and sometimes it won't start. And on live data, it's throwing all sorts of weird fault codes to do with fuel pressure regulators and what have you. Basically, it's dropping the fuel pressure. And if I show you this picture, anyone who knows anything about injectors will see the reason why. That's after 5 seconds of running or so. It's all the fuel that's coming to it, it's just fucking off back to the tank, basically, not letting it build the pressure. And it's worse when it's hot, as when you have a duff injector, which is leaking back excessively. The problem does usually exaggerate when it's hot because the diesel thins out. So yeah, we are going to change that injector. What we are going to need to make a note of is that code there beginning with a 5, that 5IA code, because that is our calibration code. So once it's put in, it will work without putting that in, or it should do. I've not put it in yet, it might fucking blow up or anything. But it should work without putting that in. But all that is to tell the ECU the calibration of this injector, because these are so precise, no two can be the same, basically. So yeah, let's get on with the shitter anyway. But first I'll just demonstrate the problem. Yes. And it won't start until the brake parts cleaner yes.
Ready, everybody, rev the engine, yes,
And as said, when doing a leak-off test, a leak-back test, we have come to the conclusion that this is the fucked injector. And for anyone unfamiliar with a leak-off test, it's to measure the overspill from the injector. So these are the low-pressure fuel lines which go back to the fuel system. And when the injector is sent fuel, it sends an amount of it back to the tank and recirculates it and only burns some of it. And when an injector is fucked, it can send too much fuel back, which drops the fuel pressure to a point where the pump can't keep up with it, which is what this is doing. And when you first usually notice is a hot start, because that's when it's at its worst point and the engine's not turning fast enough to build the fuel pressure to meet the kilopascals required for the injection system to let the injectors open. It's a fail-safe because the fuel is the lubricant for the injectors. And what we're saying about a leak-off test is effectively it measures how much each one is spilling by putting a little tube onto a little bottle for each injector, and then the one which is most full, like in this picture that I've already showed you, that's generally the fucked one. So now let's get on with changing the injector, for which I'm going to start with a 15mm spaniel, and I'm going to undo this and this one here, nice and carefully. Yes. And also, rather than unclip and fuck about with that, I'm just going to undo number 5 injector as well, pipes, because they're connected together, as you can see, so they can come off together. Yes. And now that is out of the way, I'll have to take this clip off here without dropping it. Yes. Then these return fuel line can just lift off. And the electrical connector can also be unplugged. And if we look closely, we have 2 8mm bolts on the clamp which holds the injector in, which need to be removed as well. In. Done. And now we are ready to start fighting with the injector. Now it's at this point where if you're going to have a problem, it's likely to be now, because these injectors do seize in like any diesel injectors. But on the plus side, recently, this manifold gasket was changed and the injectors have been out. Now, if they are seized in without, ideally you want an injector slide hammer to take them out, but if you haven't got one of them, then a lot of the time, not always, then you can grab them with a good pair of grips, and instead of just pulling on them, if you give them a bit of a rock, you can only go a little bit because of the shape of the cylinder head that it goes into, but if you give them a little side to side movement as you pull them, obviously this isn't tight, so I can just pull this out like so. But if it is tight, then that is one way to get it out. And as we can see on the old injector, the copper seal has actually come out with it. Now sometimes they get stuck down there, and a little trick to getting them out if they do get stuck is if you get a flat bladed screwdriver and just push it gently in, then it should stick into the seal and just give it a bit of a twist, and they usually come out on the screwdriver. That's the way you've got to be careful because you don't want to knacker up where the seal sits against. But look, ours came out anyway, so let's get on with putting the new shitter in. Ah yeah. And also, we need to swap the clamp over. So if you look at the clamp, it goes that way up with the injector going downwards through it. So it goes like this, and then it goes onto there and then slides across, and then it clamps against there, as you can see. So now as long as it's clean down there, which I've had a look, but it won't show up on camera anyway, but we can put that in nice and lovingly, like so. Might as well as plug that back in, and we can even put these back on next to make sure we clamp it down in the right place. And now with those all finger tight, we can go ahead and fit these 8mm back in. Not forgetting to torque them up to a manufacturer specific torque setting. Yes. But mechanically we're pretty much done. I've got to put that back on. Not forgetting to tighten these back up to a specific tightness required to stop them from leaking, which just goes into them two slots like so. And apart from cording the new injector in, this should work, so let's see if it'll start. Now for the moment of truth. Yes! Yes, now that is a functional vehicle again. The injector's not been corded in yet, but like I said, it will work without cording in. It's just a calibration cord, but I will try and do that. It might not make it into this video, it depends if I can get all of the diagnostics, that'll do it. So if not, that's it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the usual shit. See you next time. If I can cord it in, it'll be after this.